All right, I want to welcome everyone to the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District Finance Committee regular meeting with a special time of 10 o'clock, March 25th, 2025. I appreciate staff accommodating the schedule so we could get a quorum, and that's the reason for the change, is so that we could have a quorum. With that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And what does that bring us to? That brings us to our Pledge of Allegiance, and then roll call. You join me for a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Member Miller,
Present.
Secretary Helen,
Present.
Vice Chair Gorence, who did let us know that was going to be a nonsense, and Chair Fisher.
Present. This brings us to item number 2, the adoption of the agenda, and I do want to discuss that for a moment. At our last meeting, we did discuss the audit. We have the audit within our packet again, so it is available for public review. But we have a different set of liaisons from the board of directors this time than we did in last meeting. Because the Brown Act requires that only 2 directors can discuss a particular item outside of a scheduled board meeting of theirs, council has recommended that we do not discuss the audit in this meeting. So I'm going to recommend that item 6A and B, is this B? B is the 6B is capital improvement plan transfer.
It's the culmination of the audit.
Okay.
We can talk about it, but it's. I think we talked about it last time. Did we talk about it last time?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're both related items.
Okay, so I'll recommend that items 6A and 6B be removed from this agenda, and with that, I'll see if there's any discussion, and if not, movement for adoption of this agenda.
And if I could just add, Chairman Fisher, we did incorporate the updates and the changes from the committee from the last meeting, and those will be reviewed at the board meeting on April 3rd. So it's not like this will never be discussed again. It's just in this forum, we'd like to have it moved.
Understood. So that will be a notice meeting with all of the board of the directors, and it will be discussed again.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do I have a motion for adoption of agenda with those?
I make a
Retract.
motion, we
We do
adopt.
You do one.
Wait,
Oh.
What comment?
Sure.
Should we?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Let's go to public comment. I see no public in the room, so Cherie, what do you have on your mind this morning?
Can you name the directors that are there? Because I'm on the phone.
Sure.
They weren't part of the roll call.
Yeah, we have Director Stovall and we have Director Saunders with us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I heard a motion. I heard a second. All in favor of adoption of the agenda without action items 6A and B? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No nays, so the amended agenda is adopted. So with this, we move on to public. Cherie, I see your hand is still up. Do you have anything for us, anything additional for us in public forum this morning? I see your, okay, hand down. So nothing in public forum. That takes us on to approval of minutes from our February 27th, 2025 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes?
Mhm.
Any changes? Any discussion?
No.
Do I have a motion for approval of February 27th meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion.
A
Motion.
second.
Your motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are adopted. Informational items, let's move on to items 5A and B, financial reports and grant report, and I'll turn it over to our general manager for that.
Yes, thank you. We will take any questions on any of the financial reports. I would just like to note that we did update the grant report as requested by public member Carleon. And we are now including a date of when the grants are, when the grant report is as of. So this has been updated to include all new grants. We are working on an appropriation currently that will be submitted by the end of the week to Senator Adam Schiff. We had a meeting at the last board of directors meeting, and they elected to go after some fire resiliency funds to help with fire flows and increased treated water line. And if you recall, during December, we had a major project leak at the, what we could refer to as the Ford siphon. It kind of goes from Greenwood Lake to Auburn Lake Trails Lake, or excuse me, Sweetwater Lake. And it's a raw water conveyance siphon that had a great deal of damage, and we're going to be proposing that the appropriation helps us to line the inner part of that canal, or that, excuse me, that pipeline. So those are the updates to the grants. If there's any updates or questions about the financial reports, I have Jessica over here to take those.
So this is the time of year, I remember in my professional life, you start looking very closely at your budget and how you're gonna land the plane with only a third of your budget left. Any items stand out this year as being either very positive or very nail biting or anything?
Nothing that,
Not really.
there's a couple things that, you know, we've noticed. We did make a couple of budget amendments at the February board meeting. Travel was obviously with increasing costs, and travel has caused us to increase budget in that regard. One of the things that you'll notice in the updated budget review is for next year is inflationary costs are definitely hitting us, and that is supplies are starting to become larger, whether it's from the tariff market or whether it's just from things getting, you know, catching up from supply and demand. But you'll see in the budget, that's where most of the increases are lying, utility costs and inflationary costs.
Okay. Any other observations about this year's budget and where we're at in it? Any comments from the public? Sheree, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Are we talking about item 6C?
We're not on to 6 yet. We're still on 5, so
Okay.
we're talking about this year's budget.
Okay,
Any of the
thanks.
financial reports.
Right, hearing no other comments on our informational items. Let's move on to our big item for today, which is review and consideration of the preliminary fiscal year 2025 and 26 budget. Once again, I send that over to you, Nick.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna do a kind of tee it up. This is our kind of first blush at the budget. We took the general budget from last year with the amendments that we've made throughout the year and suggestions from various staff members, various managers. And I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to go through the presentation that we've put together and discuss where things have changed, where things have updated. And we'd love to hear some feedback from both the committee and the public.
All right, so if we start with 5100, we'll show you the last, I guess, 5 fiscals. And you can see the percent change on the far right hand side. So this one did generally decrease. There was some things that were moved around, so it's not ultimately a decrease, but we are having some. I'm just trying to take a look at the next slide. So there's 2 slides that I wish we could show together, but this is pretty much what has changed in 5100. No, that's perfect. That's exactly, but so this is the explanation of what there's a section of what's decreased,
You may want to go to the next one.
what's increased, and then on the next slide, you can see the different accounts that we have with the 5-digit account numbers listed.
And just for the committee's edification as well as the board liaisons, if it appears in blue, it is a decrease in in funding, in costs, expenses, and if it's a red, it is an increase in expenses. And I think it might be helpful if you have any questions on each account, it's probably better to do them account by account. So if there's any more for 5100, now would be the time for either if you want to describe anything else or just take any questions or anything.
What are the, sorry, question, what are these numbers on the, off to the side? Are they
How much
just,
they've decreased
okay,
or increased.
okay,
Just so you can see, when in the
Yeah.
description, we didn't put dollar amounts, we just showed what had changed.
okay.
So this way you get an idea of how much has been whittled out of these individual accounts. Or if things mostly, like you'll see 51, 52, 53, 54, and 56. Not so much 56, but materials and supplies has really gone up. It's easy to blame inflation, but that's pretty much what it is everything's going up.
Mr. Chairman, you do have a question from the public.
Okay. Sure, you go ahead.
My turn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that was my question, the number to the side. If you go to the software and licenses, does that mean the 400 was already in the budget and then you took away 5,500?
No, the 400, anything in black did not change.
And I think what,
Right, so that was original. So then to the side, there's 5,900.
yeah, it should
Shouldn't that
say,
be like
it should say 50.
55?
So that's like, you
Okay.
call, yeah, the change, so what she's saying is right there. So this is
Okay, so
400,
then
should be 50.
there's another one like on utilities. You've taken away 1,650, but then it's got a minus 9,390. That doesn't add up right.
Means it's been reduced, so it's been reduced by $9,300.
By just because the only thing you're showing is 1,650 for Verizon.
That's what we're
I don't understand.
paying next year.
The what?
That's what we're expecting to pay in that department, in that account for Verizon next year. It's been reduced by $9,400 essentially. And that's not
Okay.
just, Verizon has different components of what we pay them to do. I think,
That was Peekaboo, you moved out of utilities, that's why it's gone down so much, you readjusted where Peekaboo went to.
Were you able to hear that, Cherie?
Sorry.
No, that's great. So if you notice Pico Vale, which is under software and licenses, that used to
Yeah.
sit beneath the Verizon, under utilities, And that has been moved over to the software and licenses per GASB 68 requirements. And
Okay,
that's
so-
where that change comes from.
Okay, so shouldn't that be in red then, the 5,500, because you're adding it to that, and then it would come to the 59.
I think it went down, but yes, it moved over. So it's less than it was last year, but it is moved to a different location. So a little bit of a confusing one there, and we're sorry for that.
yeah, it's explaining updates, but yeah, we did reduce the cost of the Pico Val. But the actual account software and licenses has increased 5,900 because there was nothing in there before. It was under utilities, so we moved it.
Okay, now it's confusing those on the side. All right, thanks.
Well, that's why we're here to explain it, because if we had to write a paragraph for every single account, there'd be no room to put everything. But good questions.
Okay.
I think we can move to 50. Okay, you're already there.
52.
Mhm.
Um. So 5,200 is. A lot of the stuff is gonna be the same as what we did last year. You can see. Excuse me, material and supplies did go down considerably, and that is. Some of the stuff that we had budgeted for the mosquito fire, so 5,200 is a lot of the raw water conveyance. From generally the tunnel on down to the other reservoirs. And a lot of that material and supply, we don't feel we need this year, so we're reducing those numbers. And just kind of reallocating, so the big change here is about 4%, and there's not a lot that's, you know. The big one is going to be, the professional services, and Adam, could refresh my memory, what are we adding for professional services here? Is that just the maintenance on the equipment?
Some maintenance, some waste we have generated from.
That's what it is.
The equipment
Yeah.
that we do here, like changing oil, stuff like that, so we added some costs there.
They did change, environmental regulations changed the way we have to, dispose of our waste, so we have to use different containers and different companies, so it became a little bit more of a process for us. And that's where a lot of those increased costs came in.
They just throw it all in a burn barrel anymore.
Nope, unfortunately, we're not allowed to do that. So if there's any questions, this is our one of our smaller accounts, so if there's any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
I'm gonna have an overall question. I'm just wondering, how hard would it be, as with some of these questions have to do with transfers between accounts. How hard would it be to do a sheet? I'm gonna get in trouble by Jessica, I know it, but
Probably not hard.
that had all of the cost accounts in vertical and the accounts 51, 2, 3, 4, 5 this way. And so you could see the rolled up. In other words, so if an expense just moved from one account to another, if we could see that in kind of a rolled up form, then we wouldn't, I think that might solve some of the confusion over, well, this went down here, but it went up there. If that was
So are you looking at something like consolidated expenses?
consolidated expenses that have, well,
by-
consolidated expenses have date in horizontal and accounts in vertical. So I'm thinking of a sheet that would have cost account code, all the different types like software,
Invert this one.
materials and so forth would be in vertical, listed in
51,
vertical.
52, 53, 54.
Accounts would go across the top.
Like this one, but with the different departments listed. This is consolidated expenses by account,
Yeah,
so on the top, you'd want the different departments.
the different departments. So if anything just shifted back and forth between departments, you could kind of see that in rolled up.
Doesn't really
If
shift
I'm
between
asking for something that's a
departments,
lot,
it
but
should
yeah,
shift between accounts.
okay,
Yeah, it's almost internal between like 5,100, so we don't move it necessarily from 51 to 52
Okay.
or 52 to, sometimes we do, but more often it's. We move what's the sub account underneath the account.
Okay.
We have to, and the big change that was questioned and the last one is not something that we would have done without being told to do it by a government standard.
okay,
So the new GASB 68 is, it looks at software and licenses as a liability, and it changes the way you actually account for it. So, when you have, I'm just gonna use like somebody at home, you have your cell phone plan. So you pay that every month, you know what it is in your budget. But what the government wants us to look at is that this is a long-term expense that's gonna happen over multiple years, theoretically. And they want you to have that as a liability, so you have to basically account for that every year. You can't just like forget that this is a liability that is
mhm,
going to be something that you have to account for next year and the year after that and the year after that.
okay,
So that's why it's changed, and that's where the kind of the adjustment in the accounts comes in.
gotcha, okay. Go ahead, sorry for that interruption,
Oh, no, that's a great question.
brainstorming here, but go ahead. And we're back on 5,200. Anything on 5,200 before we move on?
You wanna move right into 5,300, this is our water treatment, and You'll notice, one of the large, expenditures is something that's always mind blowing to me is, PGE costs. So it actually goes up, the better part of $50,000 and some change this year. So,
I think my PG&E went up by 50,000 this year.
And I'm sorry to hear that seems to be a theme. It's an 18% increase is what we're projecting. So that's a huge issue that we see, you know, kind of in this this account. Not much we have control over. Another big change here is underneath materials and supplies. We had a great deal of increases in our chemical budget. So when our suppliers are passing along their increased costs to us, and you can notice that just in disinfection chemicals, polymers, we're seeing, you know, increases of, you know, $5,000-$10,000, and then we have an increase in electronics and sensors, and, you know, things are getting to that age where they're starting to break down. So materials and supplies did increase by about $21,750. So I'd say those are the two major kind of talking points. If you have any other questions, please, by all means.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none from our audience. So we move to 5,300,
5,400.
400.
So 5,400 is our transmission and distribution of treated water. So this is once it leaves the water treatment plant and getting the costs out to getting the water out to the customers. And again, one thing that I would like you to take note of is the material and supplies budget. And most notably, it's the first line there, the distribution lateral main and meter supplies. Every fitting, every connection, every piece of thing that we put in the ground to fix our water lines has been increasing. So, you know, there's a percentage of increase that is just being passed on to us as the consumer of those goods from the manufacturers. The other big increase is the Pico valve monitoring. That's a huge, we had an increase in software and licenses here. And we had quite a bit of decrease in the vehicle operating. We are proposing in the CIP to remove one of these vehicles and replace it. So part of the next board meeting is proposing to replace a couple vehicles here. So hopefully we can realize those costs in lower budgeting, and we can kind of account for buying a vehicle, but also having to maintain one less. Yes, sir.
Do we know which vehicles, you know, we're talking about major expense vehicles or?
1,500. So what we're proposing is we are going to be replacing, we have a 2004 Chevy 1500 pickup truck, and we have a 2008 Chevy 1500 pickup truck. We are proposing to replace those, but then kind of shuffling some of the vehicles. So we are proposing a Ford Ranger style pickup truck for the water treatment operator, and we are proposing a F-150 style for, Adam, help me out here, distribution. And then we are going to take one of the vehicles, some of the vehicles, and shuffle them. So the 2004 is Adam's kind of shop vehicle that he drives when he takes customers out, or he takes consultants out, vendors. And so we're going to take one of the vehicles that is within the distribution and roll it over to Adam and give one of the new vehicles to distribution. So just kind of shuffling things around, but we're proposing a smaller vehicle for treatment and a larger vehicle for distribution.
Great, thanks.
So PG&E went down here.
But down,
Yeah.
It went up by $50,000. Oh, here,
Yeah.
yes, it does. I think it goes down because of the way there's just different, meters that get billed.
We did some work on our pump stations, so we have a little more efficient pumps now. So
Nice.
They don't matter much.
You still looking at the solar, expanded solar?
That is, we actually, are working with a company now. The board signed an agreement with a company, what was that, last meeting? To start exploring the solar at the Auburn Lake Trails. Sorry, Sweetwater Treatment Plant, the headquarters building, and the Walton Treatment Plant. So yes, we are exploring solar, as an option.
Nice.
If you don't mind, I'll move on to 5,600. You're okay with that?
I don't see any other questions, comments. 5,600, here we go.
Yeah, so 5,600 is obviously our largest account. This is administration and customer service. So we kind of decreased in a lot of areas. We do have some kind of notable increases that may stand out. One is bank charges. I mean, that's a huge one. And I will make note that it went from about $500 to $8,000. However, we do receive a return on our money that we have within that account. So it actually is a net gain to the district to have money in the new bank account. So we make about $10,000 to $11,000 on interest because it's a high yield checking account that we utilize. So that's a kind of a big red flag. Oh my gosh, why'd that go up so much? We did, again, kind of in the previous comment you asked about what do we see coming from the end of this year and then moving into next year is staff travel. Conference costs have gone up, and we do have a couple of managers who are now participating in different conferences than they did before. One is what is it? CSMFO, California's. Can you help me with the
Financial management officers.
So it's a finance officers conference to help them
Some rules and
understand all-
regulations, laws, all of the
Anything that's new.
GASBs, and their classes on what, not just a PowerPoint presentation, but an actual class on why and how to report and what the regulations are on the GASB. There's 2 more new ones coming out next year, so much fun. I think they actually come out in July 101. And so that they're just, classes, so we can be educated on
Yeah.
how to report these and exactly what, I mean, just like this, we've been doing GASB 68 for 2 years now, and the ArcGIS I didn't realize was a software. They were considered a software per the GASB 68, and so now we're moving it into software license.
So it's just a little things, and that's a larger increase. We also are including other like publications in this budget as well. I'm just trying to kind of pick out some of the more notable ones. We do have a few associations that we're proposing to add. NWRA as one. That's a National Water Resource Association. They help with advocacy at the national level, and also CMUA with the increased need for the district to with solar and the potential for adding a hydroelectric generator. It's important to have utilities being part of our advocacy as well, because there's lots of legislation and lots of things that come up that have to do with making sure that we don't have problems with our utilities, our electric generation. So that's another thing that we're proposing. This is a hard one. I'd love to take some questions and some feedback on this one if you have anything.
I think CMUA is great.
You're
They're a
involved in that?
powerhouse.
Yes.
Yes, I was very involved, and they are great, and they lobby and they keep track of all the regulations that are coming through.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
And it's really a low cost compared to other associations for what we can get from them, because they bank on larger cities, obviously, and so our dues costs is relatively low.
And the cost of not being involved with them can be very high all of a sudden.
That
right?
is, unfortunately, that is true. Mr. Chairman, do you see, oh, sorry, the board,
A couple questions, comments. When we look at the legal cost, I assume because of this year with the cost of service study, there's been some legal costs associated with that will not reoccur next year. Because I see a big expense this year, but not next year. Is that a realistic explanation?
so our contracted amount is approximately $85,000 every year. It is unfortunate, we did see some increased legal activity this year. I would say that the cost of service was part of that. Some of that was budgeted for last year. In other areas, we did have professional services to pay for some of those legal costs, but yes, we're hoping that the legal costs do start to come down, but we can't really change the amount that's budgeted for due to our contracted amount.
Okay.
So as we continue, if we continue to see the increase, we would have to adjust contract and we would have to then adjust the budget.
All right. And then the other one has to do with item 560-51304, the board training and travel.
Yes.
One comment on that is that it's been changed in the policy to read board official events.
Yes, we will.
Would that be appropriate? to
Yeah, we'll
change
make
here?
that change.
And also on the February 6th meeting, the board approved approximately 22,500 for board members to attend these official events. And it was a discussion at that point that the majority of the board members believe that it's best for us to kind of get the training. You were talking about going, that the staff are getting that high level training, and I found that in the training that I've gone to, I've talked to other board members like us in small places like Paradise or whatever, and it has really given me a foundation to have a better knowledge base and perspective of other water districts. I talked to one water district that flew taken out by a rock slide and how they were able to get into, well, what kind of funding was out there and how slow that took and how they have to cut back. So the board, the majority of the board has wanted to see an increase in that expenditure. So that is one thing, right? That currently is budgeted at 17,500, but approximately 22,500 have been approved for the calendar year. Any comments? Nick?
No, I think that's a good catch, and we'll change the board training to board official events. We're gonna take away, I think, having them separated as well and just making it one line item that does the 22,500 based on how the board is accounting for these events now.
What do you mean by one?
So instead of having miscellaneous training, travel and mileage as separate line items,
Okay,
putting them together as all,
okay,
it would be all as one.
yeah, because that's how the board went through and those are approximates, like flight costs are going up and so on.
Correct.
Comments?
Yeah, and I was just gonna add with that, our policy changed, so the cost for our travel and reimbursement is different based on the new policy, so that would also change it from the way we have it also, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would increase.
I believe you have a question from Mr. Member Miller, Mr. Chairman.
That from Sheree or
No,
Miller?
Mr. Miller. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. I'm so sorry. You in like this? I thought. Just
Oh,
making
no.
sure.
Fake this out, I saw.
Like a fair catch there.
Okay. Seeing no other comments from the room. Sheree, go ahead.
Okay, it's on the legal fees. That's my question too, with the difference in, from the budgeted. And I went back to every department and there's no legal fees accounts on any of the other departments. So how could you apply it to other departments?
The legal fees is only
difference.
applied to the administrative costs of the district. So we don't apply it to
Right.
other departments.
Okay, because that's what Bob asked, was the overage, and you said something that it's accounted for in other departments.
No, I think
Or
what
other-
you, what I was trying to say was we had budgeted for a cost of service analysis underneath
Right.
professional services, and we included a set amount of money. And we anticipated legal costs being part of that budgeted
Right.
amount.
Okay, so then why is all of the legal coming out of 5600's legal when you have, where does that money show up that you took it out of the rate study? Where does it show up?
Well, we don't,
That
we didn't, we're not,
Sorry.
we're
I mean,
not
the rate study had it in there.
So it's just one cost that's not distributed. It's accounted for within the administrative overhead. I could see there not being a real practical reason to distribute it, unless there is a reason to distribute it, so.
Yeah, I guess the best way is we had accounted for additional costs for legal costs associated with the rate study that was not associated with the actual line item of legal services. So when we budgeted for the professional services of the cost of service analysis, both in 5600 and in 6100, there was an accounting for, we do need to have legal costs associated with this. So we did not spend as much in that cost of service area where we spent it in legal services. So a little bit of a cross accounting. But what you're seeing is the increase is, some of it is from cost of service analysis. And I want the public to be aware, not all of the 135,000 that you see in there today is, so that would be a difference of about $50,000. Not all of that $50,000 is as a result of cost of service analysis. So there's other items that have come up. There's been other litigation, there's been other needs throughout the district that have caused that to go up. So that's just part of it, is the cost of service analysis. So I wouldn't like say where does it actually show up, because what we did was we budgeted for a set amount for how much the cost of service was, and then we took a portion of that and billed it towards the 6100, took a portion of that and billed it towards the 5600, and that's how we determined what we did. I hope that answers the question. I know it's a little bit complicated.
Okay, so the rate study budget amount was in professional services.
That is correct.
Okay, so why wouldn't you apply the legal for that service to the professional account and not to the legal account? Because that's where it was budgeted.
Because midstream, we removed legal services from professional services so that there was more transparency in how much we were actually spending on the legal services. So that's why it's not being billed to professional services.
Okay, well, I thought legal was always separate, and it was CPAs that were included in the professional. It wasn't legal, it was the CPAs. Anyway, all right.
We follow up on her
Still-
question. Go ahead and finish, Sheree. I'm gonna follow
No,
up when
that's
you're done.
okay. It just seems crazy, but that you don't show it going to the rate study.
So let me make sure, I'll follow up on Sheree's question. So does the zone charge, for the zone, does 6100 pay a pro rata portion of the legal fee each year? Or so you budget, as an expense, you budget all of the legal fees within 5600 as an administrative expense. Well, let's say that you had to the council had to give advice on something particularly related just to the zone. Could the zone eat, you could spend within the zone, right? Within a particular budget if you needed to. There's nothing that said you couldn't.
No, that's actually probably something we should consider doing, is adding a small legal portion of the legal fee to the zone charge.
Okay.
We have a set percentage that zone, when we have a district expense that zone is part of, we do have a set percentage that they allocate to zone. So we could probably just do that calculation, make it even.
And I guess same question for irrigation.
So irrigation is part of water.
Okay,
So there is not treated water versus irrigation water. It is just water.
okay. Just water.
Just.
And don't drink some of it, okay?
Water that goes in and water that comes out.
Okay. Well, where does that take us?
I think
We,
you have a question from Director Saunders.
this.
I'm just gonna add on page 16 there, we don't have a box for legal on that chart, so.
Yeah, it doesn't because it's just one line. We
The
don't,
contracted amount.
we
it
don't
can't
usually include
change
it.
unless you change it.
Well, is the green, you're talking about this box here? Yeah, we don't usually include it because there's not multiple different things that are falling underneath that one.
But when there's a difference, so like we did pay more this year.
We can add it in.
This is a budgeted amount.
Yeah, but
We
what he's
paid
saying
more
is
this year.
because it's,
I'll just leave it at 85
Yeah.
in a box.
so it won't show, we're not actually increasing the
Oh,
budgeted
you're not gonna
amount.
show, all right.
We're just showing that the expenses were higher than the budgeted
All
amount.
right, so it can stay in that first
Yeah.
page.
I mean, I could put it right underneath.
But it wouldn't show a change.
It's not gonna change unless
Yeah,
you, a
but
board
not
action
change it.
changes it. Cause it's a PSA contract.
And then moving into zone, I'm sorry, do you mind if I move into 6100? I don't mean to.
Think we're good?
Okay,
Yep.
moving into zone, the big change here is we're budgeting a little bit for overtime. That's kind of a highlight there. The, utility costs are going up here. Again, PG&E. About $2,500 worth. We do have, another account that's going up. It's called CDS emergency. This is for any of the spills or potential spills that we may get. This is how do we respond to them. Some of the regulatory fees have gone up. And we do have some extra vehicle maintenance due to the potential for the age of some equipment and the potential for purchasing some new equipment for this account. So if there's any questions, I would love to take them.
The State Water Resources Control Board, SWRCB, that's just a fee that you have no discretion over, right?
Yeah,
Fee you pay.
it's our waste discharge requirement permit.
And so this might be a shock to some folks, but fees are going up, it looks like. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. With no recourse, okay. All right,
There was a couple of questions from the board.
yes,
A comment that I've made many times, given the propensity of the policy to change to EV vehicles and the dependability of PG&E on the divide and the cost of those vehicles, I think it's prudent, especially when I see the maintenance cost of these old vehicles, that it's important to go ahead and upgrade those vehicles as we can.
are you advocating upgrading to EVs?
No, I'm advocating to upgrading non-EVs
Non-EV.
before that policy is enacted where 50% of the fleet has to be in EVs.
Good.
Nick, I have a question. If
Yes.
we do solar, are we gonna do battery storage?
Yes, that's
Okay.
part of the exploration
Okay.
is both solar panels paired with battery storage. Right now, we are looking at an 80% offset for the Sweetwater treatment plant and for here at the office, and then potentially a 60% offset at the Walton Lake.
Why so low? Why not? I mean, I think you can go up to 150.
So, Walton, we have a problem with where we can put the panels. We just don't have enough room to put enough panels to do the full 80%. That's part of Walton.
Over sunshine.
With the, it's not so much the sunshine, it's more where you can get land mass, because we just don't have enough space. The 80%, when you start to go into 100 to 100, any more than 100, the cost benefit analysis doesn't always pencil out. While you may be getting full accounting of your PG&E costs, it becomes an exponential of installation costs. So
Okay,
I'm not the expert on this, and I will fully admit that I'm gonna help to take recommendations from our third party, because that's
Okay.
why they're in business.
okay,
But they're gonna give us a full return on the investment, and I've asked them to look at 100% offset as one of the options, so 60, 80, 100. And then it'll be the board's decision as to which offset they would like based on the return on the investment.
okay.
If I could add there, since all of the NEMs that we had, so the amount that you got payback for it has decreased from 100 to 80 to, I think now it's gonna be less than 40-20%. So getting more that we're selling back to the grid that's a done deal now. That's not a possibility anymore, so.
I was thinking
Currently
more,
33.
I was thinking more like outages, so your battery, you know what I mean? You'll
So
have-
we have generators at all of our locations, and the batteries will be able to operate. So I'll give Sweetwater an example. Sweetwater is our biggest energy producing or consuming infrastructure piece. The battery, I mean, it's gonna be as big as this room. So it will be able to operate the plant for approximately eight hours, and then during the day while the sun is out, it will be recharging the battery and providing power to the facility. We also have a generator that's there that can operate the whole facility if there is zero power and zero sun and zero anything. So we have kind of redundancy already in place, and what the battery and the solar will do is limit that redundancy or the need for that redundancy.
Mhm. Okay,
I know it's crazy.
so I'll just add this, because I just did this, but under NEM 3, there is a pricing sheet that PG&E puts out every year, and in August and September, they pay almost like $4 a kilowatt, depending between 6 and 8 PM. And if you have
Yeah.
batteries and you can discharge those back,
Right.
my little tiny battery made like $2,000 a month.
Really?
Yeah, in those 2 months, each month. So that's a potential for, just something to look at. I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
your guy is gonna know this and,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, that's great. But that's good to put out there. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that. I know NEM 3 is it's
the rest of the year, it's not worth selling. It's not, but,
well, maybe at least in those years, or those, excuse me, in those months, that it's advantageous for us to utilize that to do that, so.
yeah,
And we do have our free consultant with Aqua Terra Verde, and at the Aqua DC, they did give a whole outlook of the whole month, year, like when you sell it, when you do more battery, and when it's advantageous, and all the different grants and policies you can take into effect to make money with it. So we can maybe have Terra Verde come and give a presentation on the best utilized solar and battery of it. So
all right.
What are you sorry for?
I'll zip it now.
No, that's good. That's great. That's good. Absolutely. Don't be sorry for that. That's
important stuff. None of us are the experts on
You
this.
sit here and gab the whole time. You make one comment and apologize. for it. Come on.
That's good stuff.
There is one public comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sheree, what's up?
Well, a general question on all the departments. When you're at the chart where you're adding and subtracting, which is the updates, that's for the current budget update?
Fiscal year 25-26.
That's for the new budget?
Yes, this whole thing's for the
Right.
new budget.
So what we're looking at is proposed 25-26 budget, which begins July 25.
Okay, so then my question is, each of these categories, shouldn't that total number show up in the above budget? Because they're not the same. That's what confused me with these adding and subtracting. If you look at some of the categories and go up, back up to the budget sheet, they don't match.
What page are you on, Sheree?
Just any of them, like 6,100, for example. Let's see. The government reg fees, that might not be. If you take a total down below for an account, 7170, that should show up at the top. And it does. Okay. Some of them don't. Like on 5600, professional services don't match. That's what confused me, is how those were added and subtracted, because it has a different number. So you got
So it could-
81,100. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the formula.
It could be a formula. So we have a formula where we try to equal two cells to be equally to each other. And when you are playing around with these, sometimes those can get buggered up. So this is again our first blush at this. So I would say the 81,100 is the correct number, and we will verify that all those numbers are adjusted accordingly. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, because it just doesn't add up to what's on the above page. So, all right, thanks.
Just a formula issue.
The one that didn't,
She's right. Professional services
Yeah,
is
professional services.
80,000 and some change on the 5,600, and then it's
Oh,
actually
I'm looking at
81,100.
okay.
Yeah.
okay. Line item. Okay. Good catch.
Moving on to the next, we're actually adding something. This is more for I would say transparency's sake. Fund 103 is our hydroelectric generation fund. It's important, I think, for the board and for the committee and for the public to understand that this is one of our accounts. Typically, it hasn't been included because it's it's a generation of revenue, but there are some expenses on this account. So we want to make sure that those are included as well. With the anticipation of the district potentially taking this hydroelectric fund and the expenses associated with it over when the contracts are over, this is something we want to make sure that we're including now so that it is transparent to the public. Something else that we were reviewing our contracts. We are responsible for the outside building maintenance, and there is some things that needed to be done to the buildings. So we are including $5,000 in costs for building maintenance. This is, Adam can go over kind of what it is, but it's paint, it's, just tidying up and refreshing the outsides of the buildings.
And I do want to point out that the hydro revenue has always been included on the district revenues page.
Yeah,
We're just breaking it out because of the incidental costs that are covered by the contractor. Well, there's no cost to us at this point. It's just revenue. But if we are going to take it over, like Nick said, that we just want it to be transparent what the actual costs are for those hydros.
I think that's great that you did this.
So on page 20, you're showing lease revenue. That's revenue.
Mhm.
Should you show that as a negative? Since it's an expense sheet?
It would actually be a positive. It would be.
Yeah.
So in the bottom, you can see
Yeah.
the total is 52,144. That's the.
That's
total.
your negative. Okay.
That's the amount that comes
That's-
into the district.
So as an expense form in parentheses would be revenue.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a little
I get it.
backwards, but yeah, you're right, 100% correct.
And that is on my list to correct those GLs that present that way. It's just the way that it was set up. I know that's like beating a dead horse, but the way the Tyler conversion came over, that's how the CPAs at the time decided to set it up, and we've been trying to figure out. The way Tyler works is it talks to like 10 different screens. So if you change one thing, it affects like a domino effect. So we're trying to figure out the spider webs and how to correct it so that it'll display correctly on our budget report, but not affect the accounting within the account.
Mhm.
I see.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Well, I try not to ask too many requests because I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of background dominoes to anything that you change, so.
And we've
Okay.
made that mistake where we've updated something and then all of a sudden 5 things aren't showing up on the budget report and we can't get them to populate unless we go back and put it back to the way it was.
Okay. Sheree, we're on, let me, hang on for a sec, Sheree.
I know that the contract for hydro ends, what's the date of that?
So there's two different ones. One ends in 27 and one ends in 28. So there's, I would have to go back and give you
Okay.
some information of which one ends when, but yes.
So this will be an issue that we'll be discussing potentially next year of costs related to staff, to the district for taking over the hydro.
That is correct.
So
And
current,
also the income will change at that point too, right?
That is correct. Okay.
this is 10% of the income we receive. Our royalties are 10% unless we reach a certain threshold where they receive a generation threshold, and then we go up to 15% of that. But right now, it's usually, there's only been one billing cycle in the last 8 years where we've hit that threshold and we received more revenue, 50%.
What you're saying is our revenue will go up an additional 90%, but in addition will be the cost.
Yeah, there will
The
be
service, there'll be a number of costs,
Salaries.
staff especially, to
and
monitor
expenses.
that and other expenses, so.
And also the materials and supplies will be an expense on the district as well.
Thank you.
Sheree, we're talking about, Fund 103 hydro. You got something for us?
Yeah. Yes. Where is these total revenues and expenses reflected in this year's budget? What areas, if you're separating it out now?
We're not separating it out now, so that's a misnomer. This has always been included in the same spot. It's always included in revenues, and there is a line that says hydro revenue. We're just trying to show that there's also some expenses on that revenue that need to be accounted for. And then also for the future, this is going to be something where we need to make sure that it's very transparent that here's the revenue and this is kind of like another enterprise fund. So we have Fund 100, which is our water fund. We have Fund 200, which is our wastewater fund. This would be a third enterprise fund. This is 103, that's hydroelectric regeneration. So that's what we're trying to show here is this is a whole nother fund that we're trying to show the public that we have.
That's not new.
It's not new, it's been
Been here
here.
since mom. We
So
just
the
never-
5,800 department has always been called 5,800, but it's never been reflected separately, and it
What
won't
is-
in the future.
Oh, 5,800 is what we are gonna be calling it as we continue to move forward. So we have 51, 52, 53, 54,
Right.
55, 56. We added 5,800.
We didn't add it. It's been there. It's been
And that was-
5,800. Just saying.
We're adding it
It's
to
not new.
this, we're adding it to the budget for transparency, so you can see it. Yes, it's always been here. It's always been something that we've reported and always something we've done. But we're trying to break it down and show that the actual accounting for how that money is brought into the district. So it's always been there, but now we're trying to show you the line items that are accounted for in what we've always showed.
Naming at 5,800, and you've got a budget with all the departments, that I would take that 5,800 off of it because it's not part of the budget separately. It's included somewhere else in those other departments, correct? In the budget?
No, it is not included anywhere else. No.
It's always been
So
5,800.
if we go down, if we go down by consolidated expenses by department, it doesn't show up there.
Because
Or
it's
does it?
different. Yeah, it's a different enterprise fund and we are trying to
We
start.
don't have costs. Like this is, it's on revenues. It's always been on revenues. We don't have technically a cost.
Well, you have expenses on there. Where were the expenses before?
It's the
You
data
gotta-
line.
Yeah,
That's why he sends us an invoice every month with our royalty check. And it itemizes out all of the things that he has to cover, she, them.
Right.
And then,
They pay
that's
us.
where we get that information, then they take all of that expense
Off
out of
before-
royalties and give us the
before
royalty.
you get the revenue. All the expenses are taken out before you get the revenue.
Correct, so we don't
Okay.
have expenses for the district,
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
why we've never had to budget for it, but we do have it as a revenue, because we know historically
Yeah.
how much revenue we get
Yeah.
each year.
Okay, all right, thanks.
This is really just in preparation for getting ready to take it over, and the accounts that you see on this screen, that's all that really exists. So we will have to develop and create the other material. I think we have materials and supplies, but we don't have all of the other things that the rest of the funds and departments have, because it's never been utilized in that way.
Okay,
So you will see more, it will look more like the other departments in the future when we decide, the board and staff decide what line items we will need going forward.
Question? Just to kind of piggyback on that, getting ready to take it over. I remember a discussion at one point about becoming a utility generation district, kind of like PCW and the one up at Truckee, where we're actually, besides treating water, now we're generating electricity. Those issues are gonna fall into place as this process comes along.
But potentially, it's a board decision, but potentially. So that's,
It's gonna put us under some different umbrellas is what
it doesn't change,
We're already there.
it doesn't change
Okay.
much, because
Okay.
we're already a PUD, so we already have the ability to generate power.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
There are some, what is the, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, there's a term that a CCA.
Okay, so we're already there, I guess.
There's obviously more paperwork, but yes, we're generally there, yes.
Anything else on hydro before we move on to consolidated?
Yeah, so for consolidated expenses, a couple of things I'd like to note. Materials and supplies has an increase of about 16%, and that's, the theme of what we've talked about today. Durable goods and rentals, that's a 33%. That's just in preparation for things that we may or may not need. And then I want to just make note of the utility costs. We talked about PG&E going up so high, but it's only an 11% increase, and part of that is because we've moved things into the software and licenses as was previously discussed. So that's, it's the utility cost increase is probably closer to, 17-18%, but because we're adjusting and moving some accounting figures, that's why it looks that way. And then if you notice near the bottom, there's something called low income rate assistance program. We are proposing that this would be increased to approximately $50,000 this year. And that would require a policy update and change by the board. At the last rate study, we increased as a way to not let the cost of service increase affect low income customers as much by increasing from 25% of a low income on the 25% reduction in the base charge to a 50% reduction in the base charge. So that was not only the percentage went up, but the amount of the base charge went up. So the actual amount of the discount went up kind of 2 times, if that makes sense. So we are proposing that we may want to budget a little bit more of that for that low income rate assistance program.
You talk about the swings in part-time versus overtime expenses for next year.
So we, our part-time is difficult to judge. Sometimes that's based on who we have. We've had some additions to the district in little babies, and we've had some people out on FMLA leave. And so when we have that happen, we have to hire somebody who's a part-time employee. And so that is generally where those part-time numbers come from. So it's hard to budget for those because we don't anticipate when somebody is going to be out or we have medical things or issues. We don't hire anybody as a part-time employee. We don't have anybody as a temporary employee. We only utilize them on an as-needed basis. So that's why you see what you see there. And then the overtime, the increase in overtime is, I believe, and I'll have Adam correct me if I'm wrong, it's not an increase in time, it's more of an increase in wages and, um. Am I right or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
I think it's both, because as the system ages, we do see an increase over time, especially on the transmission distribution side and some treatment side. The raw water typically stays the same overtime wise, but there is some, if we have, say if we have a more severe winter or something like that, we have more overtime on the water side, but.
So is that when you see your bulk of overtime is in the winter?
No, raw water, we see it during summertime, during irrigation season, because we run on call all the time, every day. We see the most distribution, we see during the change of seasons when the soil goes from like a wet soil to dry soil, that's when it expands and contracts, that's when we have our most breaks.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the fall, springtime, so yeah, we don't talk about breaks, but yeah, we'll probably start going up shortly.
And hopefully if we can get some of this grant money, that was part of the process of, changing out some of these treated water lines that are aging. Having breaks, having issues where we can not, have to deal with that. One of the big breaks that I discussed earlier was the siphon. And we had $11,000 to $12,000 in expense just on that one break, and that was 2 or 3 days. And I mean, that was obviously some parts in there, but a lot of that is manpower, and that was an all through the night type of an operation where we had to make sure the water was continuing to flow.
Right.
So he's right. As the system continues to age, we definitely have to maintain some things, and we have to continue to upgrade and update some things.
Mr. Saunders.
So when I was on the finance committee, that's what we used to track the overtime and the months, and I remember followed up with that as well. And what that ended up culminating is we did more into the asset management to now really track the pipes and aging to make sure that we can repair and replace things so there are less breaks. So that's what we have the focus on to try to minimize it. But as we said, we're aging infrastructure, so when something breaks, that's gonna increase the overtime.
And to piggyback on what Nick said earlier about that break, it was roughly, I think, $60,000 to outside contract for that, and that's where we're looking at the grants to get lining to go inside. That, I don't know how many breaks it's gonna take to break even, no pun intended.
Yeah.
That's what the district is looking at, is let's do some preventative maintenance rather than reactive maintenance.
Absolutely.
So the next slide is, it's also consolidated expenses, but it's by department. Nothing really stands out here. What the big thing is you look at the far right column, you can see the percent changes for all the different departments. And overall, it's approximately a 6% increase in the budget from last year.
If I could back up on
Of course.
the consolidated expenses. Under salaries, 7% increase. Is that a solid number now? Have the MOUs been signed? Do you now know what those costs are?
Yes, the MOUs are all approved and signed. Both, one was approved in April of last year and one was approved in December of last year. So those are for 5 years. The district understands how much we have moving forward.
Okay. 7's a pretty big jump in 1 year. Is that what salaries went up by? 7%?
They were all a little bit different.
I mean, I know if with inflation, you need to pay people to keep people.
So that includes,
Not arguing that, just looking at that 7%.
yeah, that includes the COLA. So there is a COLA associated with all the salaries, as well as some of the specific positions also receive an increase for the first 3 years of the MOUs. So not every position receives an increase, but some of them do.
Are there any new positions contributing to that 7%?
Actually, we have a reduction of, we're removing one position and we're adding 2 positions, but the 2 we're adding and the one we're removing is actually a net gain of we're paying less for having more bodies. So what we're proposing, and this isn't been approved at the board level, so I'm just saying what we're proposing as a staff is to remove the field superintendent position from the organizational chart. We have three really solid leads.
It's not Adam, right? You're not getting rid of him.
There's a box on the desk. No, absolutely not. No, we have a retirement. He's been with the district for 18 years. He's been a great asset to the district, and we're sorry to see him go. But we made a change before last year's budget to add a distribution lead and a maintenance lead because we anticipated that this person wasn't going to be with us forever, and so. I'll commend staff and Adam particularly for putting together a really solid plan. And then we kind of went over that plan, and these three solid leads, we have a treatment lead, a distribution lead, and a maintenance lead, who are all going to be kind of at the same level. And if we add in two additional bodies on the bottom for helping with the increased work and the increased load that we have here, we'll save approximately $20,000 to $30,000 in salary by removing the large salary and bringing in two smaller salaries.
Okay, thank you. Now we can.
I believe you had a question.
Sheree? Go ahead.
Okay, so what I showed the last time is the expenses by account and expenses by department. It still doesn't match
I'm
the
working on it.
totals. So $767 better.
So I don't know if you heard that, but Jessica acknowledged that she's working on the formulas to true those up.
So it's all formula based.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one giant Excel spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Probably somebody needs to go in every single formula and, audit probably every formula.
That's what I'm doing.
That's how Jessica spends her evenings and weekends and
Thousands
holidays.
of cells.
Yeah.
I would say part of the issue is we have lots of inputs.
Mhm.
And we have lots of people who are trying to provide good, solid information, and every time either I get my grubby fingers in there or Adam gets his grubby fingers in there, we screw up Jessica's good work and we make sure that it's not perfect. So then Jessica has to go back through and make sure that everything is cleaned up. So you have a good catch that there are some missing formulas, but we will clean it all up before it is presented again.
Well, and a good example is last year we didn't budget for capital expenses within the individual departments. We put most of the capital purchases into the CIP, and I removed that line. And it messed up everything. So then I put it back in, and now it's pennies off or dollars off. But when I look at this sheet, these are the numbers I'm seeing in the spreadsheet, and I'm checking the connections, the formulas in there, they look solid, so I'm not sure why. There's something else attributing to these. And I feel like I should just wipe out all the formulas and start over.
Oh, boy.
No, that's it
You
forever.
have the numbers.
It's saved first
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah. I
mean,
don't
this
know
is-
if I would do that.
comes from the budget report.
It is
Okay.
frustrating. So, but we understand, and thank you
Keeps
for.
getting better.
It is getting better though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
And again, I know we were kind of talking about consolidated expenses by department. So the big note is, we went up by 6% in the water department, and down by about 5% in the wastewater department. You can kind of go through and see where those changes came about. If you have any questions, there's not really much to talk about here. You can see where the big changes come in. Obviously, treatment, that's one of those big, huge things is that energy cost, that utility cost. So 20% sounds like a lot, but you got to look at where the costs are coming in. Was there any questions on this one?
I'm ready to go on to revenue.
Yep.
Talk
All right.
money.
Let's talk money. So, right now we are and I would really caveat this, because I know we just did a rate study, and you see that the change is going down. We want to be really, really careful as to how we put a number in here. So we have looked at the first billing cycle of the new cost of service. And we want to be real careful as a staff before we put a number in here as to how much revenue we have coming in. So we are still vetting that number that is going to be put into this account.
Can you give this committee a quick primer on that rate study, the recommendations of it, and where the board is with it right now?
Correct. So the rate study has been approved and passed. That was done in December. It was approved at 10% of a rate increase for the water department and 90% for the wastewater department.
Okay. Over how many? Over what?
All you
just-
said is 1 year. You said 1 year's rate. So they will meet again in December, or if they choose to meet at a different time, there is a little bit of room. So the actual approved rates could have been higher than that. So the board did vote to set a cap. And then they voted to approve a rate that was lower than the cap. So if that makes sense, in that the rates could go up if the board or staff sees a need, they can adjust those rates at any time. There is kind of an umbrella that you can go up to, but we are underneath that umbrella.
And when do those approved rates increases take place?
They took place on January 6th.
So that's revenue coming into the 24-25 budget and will continue to come into the 25-26.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was basically at the first of the year is when the adjustment happened. With reading meters, there's a couple of days. We didn't want to have anybody have their meter read in last year and have an increase, so we were really very careful about how those were read.
Very good. Appreciate that.
So that number will change, and I want you just to kind of see, but you do see a minus 9%. Some of that is because we're moving money out of residential. Again, we've been trying to make sure that we're getting all the different accounts captured that we have. Irrigation, excuse me, not irrigation, commercial sales and these multifamily, any of the bigger water meters, their expenses, or excuse me, their revenue is going up from the district because of the way the base charge is billed. So we are billing the new cost of service bills, larger meters at a higher rate. So residential there's some people's bills who actually went down. So that was kind of just a different way of allocating the different funds. And I would say that the revenue page for the water sales needs a little bit of work. It's because it's very early and we're still trying to figure out where we're at. So if there's questions, we'll do our best, but Jessica and I have been sitting down to try to calculate this to make sure we have a solid number in there.
In January, February billing that comes out March 1st is typically our lowest paying billing cycle of the year. So it's already low to begin with, and we're just trying to, May will be the cleaner.
So, and then moving on, property taxes. We always account for a slight increase in property taxes because as people sell homes or move or do things, we do typically get a little extra money. Leases, this is just, we know what our leases are, they're pretty standard. Interest income. I think we did receive some notes from our investment partners that just because things are getting a little less favorable in the interest market, that we want to reduce that number to 300,000. The rest of the stuff is kind of, except for going down to SMUD. SMUD is, we can probably increase that, but we don't know what that is until we're told by the county what the calculation is for the year. And the hydro revenue is, again, it's pretty consistent, pretty stable, but we don't know what that is until the actual check's in our hand. Zone charges, obviously that will have a pretty large increase because of what was increased at the cost of service. So we do anticipate more revenue coming in to cover those fees. And then moving on to grants, we are anticipating approximately 5 million in grants this year. We did receive a couple of big appropriations. Can't guarantee when those monies will hit, but. You know, we keep hearing, things are favorable, things are happening and things are moving. There's a potential that we receive a $9 million grant tomorrow. We have been working with the USDA on upgrading and updating the upper canal system and pipelining a lot of that, and we are just kind of waiting for when they can finalize all their documentation and all their paperwork, and obviously, so that number may change. This is our best guess, and I'd be happy to take any questions on the revenues.
So you don't really anticipate a loss of residential sale revenue. That'll be adjusted. So that's a conservative number. 2.4 million is a conservative number.
Very conservative, yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, and the 2.625 from last year didn't include the institutional government amount. It did, sorry, it did include it, and we did a budget amendment to fix that. So this is more realistic for residential sales because the institution government, the 157, was included in that amount.
Okay. Irrigation sales, that number seems concerning today, to date, FY 24-25, 229,000. We only see revenue in the current, this is year to date, fiscal year 24-25
Sure.
actuals as of end of February.
There's a whole billing cycle that we haven't had in
We
there.
have 2 more months to add, May and June.
May and June, but that's still of a 5-month season, that's what, 40% of your annual revenue, I guess, would come.
It
in
averages
those 2
about
months.
77,000 a month for the 5-month season.
Yeah,
So
so
140 to 229, I guess that, so
We'll
you
be really
anticipate
close.
hitting that 380?
Well, not only that, but this May, June, the rates went up, so it'll be a little bit more than 77. I don't have the total numbers yet, so I don't know
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, it'll get really very close to
the
that
line
380,
increase, yeah.
if not go over.
I hope our irrigation committee can come up with some really good ideas for getting people, making it worthwhile for people to sign up, start using water and buttress that irrigation system. Just love to see more opportunity on the divide for economic opportunity that makes it worthwhile to use that water to green up the divide, to just see economic activity and green activity happening on the divide. Yes.
One thing that was brought up at the irrigation committee that I would say a good third of our irrigation customers are aware of, but that a lot of people are not, is that you can pay your irrigation, you could prepay year round, you could pay a set amount. We have multiple accounts. I have one account that's over $5,000 and they just prepay every month, bill pay, and when the season hits, then it depletes that account and then they start over again. And that's one thing a lot of people aren't aware of, is that you have to have your account paid in full, but you can add a running credit on your account also.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that the irrigation committee asked for, billing options, multiple billing options, and we can't change how we bill. It has to be for all or for none. So they're gonna be putting out a survey to see how they would like to be billed. Is it, they like the 3 billings now, it's like 2.5 billings, do they want it to be 5 billings, or do they want it to be 12 billings? So we're gonna be doing some work and research with the customers to see how they want to be billed. But one of the things that Jessica brought in was, if you would like to divide your 5 months into 12 billings, please, by all means, we will happily do that for you, and you just build a balance and then it goes out, and you build a balance and it goes out.
And that is fully explained to customers if they express any kind of hardship. So if they call and ask for a payment plan, that is definitely explained to them what their options are in regards to spreading out their allotted water season amount throughout the year. And we will let anybody know who asks.
Okay. We're still,
Is it early to say from, the cost of service on irrigation water, if the actual number of inches sold has changed significantly?
The number of inches was, we did go over it at the irrigation committee, and if Adam has it, I think he has it somewhere handy for us, and It was approximately 10 to 12 inches less. Or we lost 10 customers and I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Yeah, no,
And I
I'm
remember,
I'm filling
I
the,
filled out
this
the
is what the
survey,
MC does when
and I
when
forgot
you're
when
waiting.
the deadline for the request is, was it
Well, we did
Is it March?
receive, it's March 1st.
March? Okay, so.
We did receive
that
about
information.
30 late applications, so
Yeah.
they were still kind of going over who got what, where and where.
Okay,
To make sure there was no overlaps and make sure there was enough available water. Because if you turn in your application late, you are kind of the priority, you kind of bump in around.
22 inches less. And the change in revenue is. About $30,000. So we were projected revenue of 430 based on what we just came through with our current applications.
so you're saying the revenue, as you see it now, will decrease 30,000?
No increase.
Increase, okay.
And I think we did. The customer is up or down? Like we lost a couple customers?
Customers are down, yes.
I think more than, people reduced the amount of inches more than we lost customers. So they're using less water.
Okay, all right.
We did get 2 applications this week. So,
Well, late applications are counted in there too.
they're already accounted for.
And is there any waiting list anywhere for irrigation water? Or could anybody sign up for it today and we got the capacity to serve additional?
So I would say 75% of our irrigation lines have availability. There are a couple that are at capacity.
Okay.
And it has to do with where they fall within the system. So our main ditch from basically the one that flows behind us here and goes out to Sweetwater. There's a few areas where we can't serve anymore because of capacity issues. We just can't physically push more water down the line. But Kelsey Ditch and anything out past Sweetwater, those all have availability.
Okay. Sherry? Oh,
Did you have, you
Yeah,
have,
that was a comment of if we could, the irrigation customers can weather 2 years, then, as our hydro revenue increases, the cost of service is tied into hydro with irrigation, so they may see a reduction in their overall costs, so.
all right. Sherry? What you got?
Just a question on irrigation raw water for 23-24. That's $620,000. That doesn't make sense.
yeah, so that is the year where we had to adjust the seasons and we actually had multiple months that were billed separately. So you, yeah, 6.5 extra months of billing. Or so,
Not
sorry,
extra.
sorry. We billed for 6.5 months as opposed to billing for just 5 months. So that's why there's additional revenue there. It's actually,
I mean,
it's actually explained
it's
quite
like
well
double.
if you review the audit.
Okay, because it's like double.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry.
So
I was
that's
gonna ask you too. That stood out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that got changed after this last audit?
No. I'll check it.
So-
I know it was very high.
Yeah, but that seems, like, like double. So anyway,
Verify.
it just looked
You can
weird. Okay.
Just for the benefit of the zone payers, with that dramatic increase, what are the just high level, what's that paying for? What are the needs, just in narrative form, that need to be paid for?
Well, that account had been running in a deficit for several years,
Okay.
for multiple years. And so this is to pay for the expenses on the account. So you can go back up to 6,100 and, the total expenses for that account is about 400,000. So we're still running, kind of even at this point, but we're starting to generate a little bit more as opposed to running at a deficit, we're running break even.
So it's not a particular capital project or anything per se, it's really a catch up.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Anything else on revenue? Anything else on our, just bring us to the end of our, no, we need to move on to capital.
Just capital
improvement.
improvement plan, so,
Yeah. All right,
we can go over, you know, kind of some of the high level stuff. We really need to focus on some of our distribution tank coatings. We are looking at replacing some of our equipment. We have the 430,000, you see that's in red there, that's excuse me, sorry, something we're proposing to go after the appropriation for, so the anticipation is that that's going to be paid for with grant revenue. A big project that we're facing right now is dredging of Walton. About $5.5 million to dredge what we have in Walton. We do have some funding coming from FEMA. We have applied for some grants through DWR, and we have some other appropriative money that we can maybe put towards that. Once we get it dredged, the district is proposing putting in some infrastructure to make it less onerous to dredge in the future. So that is what we are, the $250,000 there in not this year's budget, but in next year's fiscal year, is to pay for a silt fence. So that we can kind of limit where the silt comes in, we can catch it at the kind of point of intake, and then we can scoop it out with a long reach excavator. Moving down.
can I, just not a financial question, but what do you do with all the dredgings?
So we have worked with FEMA and our engineer to take the material that we are taking out and bring it right back where it came from, up in the upper country. As we put the pipelines in, it'll be used as fill cover dirt for the pipelines of the canals. So we're trying to kill two birds with one stone. Instead of having to move a bunch of dirt up there, we can bring in a lot of that material as fill dirt.
Interesting, okay.
We're proposing to put in some security gates both here at the headquarters and at the two different treatment plants over the next couple of years. And these would be just to limit access to people who don't belong here at the headquarters, so they'd be automatic moving gates that will allow people in and out as they have a code or something. We do see some people wandering in the back at times, and we have had some people knock on the door at the treatment plant just to limit those kind of interactions. We think putting in some security gates might be helpful.
I'll throw this in too, from my experience with my past local agency employer. We were running into folks who made it their hobby or business or whatever to make gotcha YouTube videos. If you're aware of those, but they'll come up and try to bait the employees and claim First Amendment rights or public access. And the net result of that is that we had to get a lot more kind of tight and explicit about signage of where the public was allowed to go and where they weren't. So
yeah, you'll notice we actually had some training based on First Amendment auditing and have signs in many areas. I know Liz had put out a bunch of signs for the boardroom because this is kind of a gray area boardrooms.
mm-hmm.
And it's only accessible during times of public meetings, and so we had to be very explicit as to how we put the information on the doors. And we do have restricted access on the gates, but since they're open 24/7, or not 24/7, they're open while we're open for business. It's again a gray area, so we're just trying to make sure that we are taking account for what we need to take account for. So I appreciate your take on that, and we feel the same way. Another big one is vehicle replacements. We do have proposed, again, as was stated, vehicle replacement for this this fiscal year, and then we are seeing as we move down the line how our vehicles should be replaced on a regular basis. Adam and myself have gone through the vehicles, and we have a tentative replacement schedule for them, and it is located within the budget so that it can be referenced for the future. A lot of little stuff. You'll notice that some stuff is in green. These are contract amounts. So while requested to be put here in the capital improvement plan as they support the projects that we do here at the district, these are contracted amounts that we have with various companies. Nothing really other high level. Moving into zone, we did move a few things into the zone capital improvement plan. These were proposed in last year's capital improvement plan, but were at board direction were postponed until this coming fiscal year due to the cost of service analysis and where we were running in a deficit. Now that we're running not in a deficit, it is to propose to bring some of these back. The biggest one is we are trying to install a water line at the CDS field that will help us to do more work down there. And part of the work there is, you'll notice it's called, sorry, I'm trying to find it here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's right there at the top. I'm looking at every line except for the very first one. Lift station upgrade. So we did receive a spill notice February because of some of the larger rainstorms. So we have a temporary project in place to put a tank in to capture those spills so that it can fill the tank before it spills. So that is one of the larger expenses for the CIP. And then if you move into the grant funded, which we can talk about in a moment, we anticipate applying for a grant to do the overall larger project. It's approximately $1 million through Prop 4. So we're doing a small one that we can afford, and then we're gonna do the big upgrade later. So moving into grant funded, kind of just due to what's happening at the federal level, all of our stuff is still available. It's just we have to move it kind of down the line because of the holdup at some of the different administrative departments. So nothing has gone away, nothing has been taken away. We are just, I hate to say the term, but kicking the can down the road. But these are all still projects that we are proposing to do. I'll just take any questions on the whole capital improvement plan if you would like.
How do you feel like we're doing in general on preventative maintenance? We talked earlier about the importance of preventative maintenance. If you don't do it well, it starts eating away at other expenses.
I would say that there was always room to do more preventative maintenance.
But there is a sweet spot, right? I
There
mean,
is a sweet
you're
spot
trying to
there.
find that place where you are not spending more on overtime staff and those kind of costs than you are on. So where do you think we are? This is just a narrative question more than a quantitative.
It's a really, I'm gonna put him on the spot, and I think it's a really good question for Adam, because he's seeing kind of where things are changing and how things are changing on whether we do a reactive maintenance or whether we do a preventative maintenance. And I know we've been trying to shift over to doing more preventative maintenance, and I would just like to maybe get his opinion on, do you think we're doing enough, or do you think we should do more?
Preventive maintenance?
Yes.
Do more.
Yes, but how close are we hitting an area where you think that, you know, obviously there's still an affordability concern.
Right, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, see, I turned it over to the ops guy. He's like, let's do it all first before we have to react to it. But you know, in my opinion, there's only so much. Again, the sweet spot is, where do you find that good sweet spot? I would love to be able to go in and change every pipe out, change every canal, change everything out, but it would just be financially unfeasible.
Right, yeah.
So do I think we're getting to a much better sweet spot? Yes, I think we are. And I think Adam has done a great job of kind of seeing the needs in a lot of areas and finding those kind of adding in PRVs, adding in master meters, adding in the things that can help us operate the system more consistently, that actually reduce the amount of need for reactive maintenance. So PRVs, if we're able to control pressures as they go through the system, we don't have reactive maintenance because we have a pressure surge. Master meters, we can isolate the system more as we needed to do repairs or to fix things or to add things So I'm gonna turn it back over to you. So I've talked my talk. Now you can come in with your serious. Do you think we're in a good place with preventative versus reactive?
Yeah, I think we've definitely made that transition, to try to, foresee those issues coming down the road. And I think one of the big things is too, our system is older. And, instead of, when we fix it, we've kind of steered it instead of just kind of putting it back in place how it was, which is a lot of infrastructure is old, it was done with an older standard. Have your type of, your soil moisture is changing, you get expanding contraction, we try to restrain our joints instead of just doing another slip-on joint. So some of those costs, that is more expensive to do up front, but we're not gonna have to revisit those breaks or those joints, until the whole assessment or whole pipe was to fail, so we're kind of transitioning away, from towards that. And I think it has helped, because we don't go back, but the PRB has been, the mass meter, the same thing, that's just to understand the system. I think the next step would kind of be like a pressure management kind of, throughout the entire system, really understand where pressures are throughout the system and where, so we can continue to focus on the. Yeah, but we're definitely making progress towards that non-reactive. I mean, we're still gonna have them, just how our system is, but yeah.
Very good.
And the last slide is just kind of future capital improvement plan projects. These are not proposed, but stuff that we see coming down the pipe, so to speak, in the future. Mr. Chairman, we have a question from board liaison.
Mr. Stovall, can you just touch on the water transfer issue for the committee's education?
Yeah, so there are additional revenues that we don't include in the budget that could potentially come in. So there is the potential for a water transfer. So what we're hearing this year is it's not likely, could potentially still come, but those are definitely things that will be utilized to offset some of these expenses to reduce the need for future rate increases or stabilize the need for future rate increases. It's definitely trying to utilize the district's resources to help benefit the constituents here. We don't want to have to come in and hammer them with more and more higher rates. So we're trying to find everything that we can possibly do to lessen that impact. I hope that is what you are. So we're trying to turn over every rock and every stone to find every extra dollar that we can potentially find.
Am I right? The board has not approved, authorized any water transfer, any water sales off of the divide right now?
No, they have not. And the only direction that the board has given is that staff is, we are still able to discuss and look for a partner, but no partners have materialized. So there has not been any authorization of any water transfers.
Are there requests for water?
As of right now, we have not received any requests, but we have been told that they may come. So we're in a holding pattern as well.
Anything else?
Hmm.
Does that take us to the end?
Mhm.
This is an action item, so we, the Finance Committee, have the opportunity to express our recommendations to the board.
Yeah, I think we've captured some of the discussion points that we can materialize into a recommendation if you trust the staff to take what you guys have talked to us about and put together something for the board to have from the Finance Committee, if you'll trust us to put that together.
I'll see if I can kind of capture the mood of the committee. I would say, given some of the minor formula errors and understanding that some of the revenue numbers are still in flux, that we are in favor of the direction this budget's going, and would encourage staff to continue with the philosophy and direction that they're going with it to the board.
Yeah, and next steps are, we will be presenting this to the board at the April 3rd meeting and seeking their input as well. And it will be coming back to the finance committee in April again with their comments so that we and you can have another chance to review. We can do this one more time. It'll go back to the board in May for another review. And then we have already set a board/finance committee agenda for, correct me if I'm wrong, it's May 25. maybe? I know we have it set, it's a joint finance committee board workshop, so it's actually agendized as a board meeting. So that all the board members can be here, we can all do our normal roundtable. We can go back and forth, we can discuss the potentiality for how we finalize this budget, and then the anticipation is June 6th, I believe is I am visualizing a calendar and I'm hoping that I'm saying some of these dates correct, but I believe it's June 6th is where we're anticipating final adoption of the budget. So I'm gonna look to Liz to clean up my dates to make sure that I am correct in what I'm saying.
Internet's really slow, sorry.
I have May 22nd.
Yeah.
May 22nd will be the joint workshop,
Okay.
so I was wrong. And do you wanna have the board meeting?
I don't have good internet right now, hold on.
Do we have a time yet for the May 20th?
It would be 2 o'clock, I believe.
The one in May,
May 22nd, 2 o'clock.
2 to 4, yeah, got it.
And then, yeah, the internet here is a little wonky, so the June,
I have a June 5th.
yep, that's it. See, I was wrong again. I'm the first to admit when I'm wrong. June 5th, that will be tentative adoption of the agenda.
Oh, we had a joint budget workshop on there.
Yeah, there's a calendar on our website that Liz put together that shows when the board meet, all the meetings for the irrigation committee and all the meetings for the finance committee. They are color coded a bit when they're tentative or when they're on recess, so. You all, as a finance committee, have 2 more meetings. You have April and May, and then you go on recess.
Okay,
Thank you for putting those on our calendars. The invites are very helpful.
Yeah, I know Liz has sent out calendar invites to all of you, just to, for those of you who are technology minded, I know not everybody is technology minded, but for those of you who are.
It's our April date. You're doing
27.
24th, no, sorry, 27th, no, 24th.
27th is Sunday. It's gonna be
It's the
that.
24th, April 24th.
Make you come in on your weekend.
Okay, I don't have an invite for that one yet, but I am away. 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Okay, well, I'll do my own calendar after. I won't take a reason. I keep doing that. Chair get a little distracted here. Anybody have anything else they want to do today, or just watch me fidget with my
Couple of
calendar?
comments before you adjourn. So one thing is, as good business practice at the end, you always have your annual review, which shows your balance sheet with profit and losses in our government. It's surplus and deficit, and we don't have a clear page of that anymore. So one of the things I'm recommending is that we have a government fund balance sheet, which does show our clear surplus or deficit that doesn't have any of the GASB requirements in it. So one that doesn't have depreciation or the CalPERS liability, because those aren't actual cash removals or additions. So that's one of the things I'm recommending. And
Before can you hold your thought for 1 second? I just want to make sure we're not getting ahead of ourselves. I think the chairman started to make a motion on passing something along to the board, and then we got into discussion of scheduling. Would you capture whatever motion that you had with capturing your.
Yeah, thank
guys'
you for bringing us
thoughts.
back there. I got sidetracked myself. So I'll motion that given the changes in formulas and some of the items that we understand are in flux and not final yet, that the finance committee supports the direction of the budget and encourages staff to continue
Perfect.
on the track you're on.
Yep.
How's that?
Yes, perfect.
Do we
Get all
just
that?
have a second and if you guys wouldn't mind just making a motion
I
or a
make a
vote?
motion, we approve what Andy just said.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
There we go. All right, now we'll move on to, this is finance committee member comments and reports. So let me go back to you.
Yep, and then the other thing is, I would also recommend that, if we have a liaison that's absent, we don't fill it, because now since the legal counsel is, penalizing our board for Brown Act, and we can't move ahead with the agenda, I just go ahead that only the liaisons are now able to come to these meetings then, so if I'm absent or Robert's absent, then it's just one absence.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that the legal counsel wasn't penalizing the committee. Maybe that's a strong word.
That's
I
the word
say
I'm using.
it's a being extra careful in how we are proceeding, just to make sure that we don't run into any issues moving forward. So
Exactly,
Yeah,
I know it's protection of the Brown Act, I'm just, giving my nudge to Frank there, but, yeah, that's, just so, the finance committee is able to move forward, we don't wanna limit your abilities.
Appreciate that. Yeah, probably an abundance of legal caution, but we don't want to be caught sideways of the law.
And I totally agree with the depreciation. I know that when I was dealing with audits and budgets, that putting depreciation in there is necessary. But from an actual management of funds and predictions, it just was irrelevant. And I like that concept.
Yeah, so I mean, there is the accounting one that we
Yeah,
can show, and we show
absolutely.
the reconciliation of it, but we also need our actual working. This is the health of the district, this is the money we have or don't have to transfer to the CIP. That gives us a clear sheet of where we are.
A clear sheet is, yeah.
Director Saunders, do you have anything else that you were going to share? It's something you were talking about your role in LAFCO. Anything else on your
Oh,
mind?
no, well, that was it, so that kind of
Gotcha.
showed up, that's something in LAFCO, because especially if you're subscription based and you have to charge agencies, so let's say you have a windfall 1 year and the CalPERS liability is up and you have an extra $1 million. Unfortunately, that's not cash, so it says, based on that, you wouldn't charge your agency anything, but you didn't have any money for payroll or leasing or anything, so that's why I bring it up.
Very good. Any other board, member comments, committee member comments?
No.
All right, having none, agenda items for next finance committee meeting. Any requests? I know we'll be taking another look at the budget. Taking a closer look at the year end.
we probably will not be on year end. We can look closer at like kind of where
We're
we
approaching
are.
year
Yeah,
end,
as
yeah.
we. It's hard probably until the May meeting. You won't have a much better understanding of the year end looks like, because that's where we can kind of get an understanding, but
I will be updating
yeah, you'll have
the
new
actuals
numbers.
in
You'll
the
have new
budget,
numbers.
so you'll be able to see where we're at.
Mhm, mhm.
Is it, oh no, I took that out of Reddit, oh, it's in the fund. I was like. Percent per meeting's gone.
If there's something else you guys wanted
It
to
should
look
be in
at,
the
then
funds.
we'd be happy to include that.
I am I'm interested in this whole issue of how our long-term PERS costs are calculated, because like we said several times, it's not cash. We're given parameters and rules for how we calculate that, and yet, nobody today can say the exact dollar amount. There's too much.
Well, it changes
Too much
every day.
variable, but I would be pleased to, if we have a good opportunity in one of our upcoming agendas, to do a little deeper dive into just what all that means, what long-term PERS liabilities mean to us, how they're calculated.
It's in the actuary
Yeah,
report.
we can go over the actuarial report that we get, which is what they use to calculate those charges.
Yeah, just in layman's terms, kind of have us on the record as much as possible, what all that means to a ratepayer.
Yeah, we can do the best we
Right.
can, but I'm not sure there's any
You guys-
layman terms
I
there.
trust you guys can articulate it. But that'd be good to.
And if I can add, when that discussion is also bringing up the option of having one of those holding funds for your CalPERS liability where we do put in money and we can take out to pay off our annual, but we could build up an offset for the unfunded liability. So bring that into the discussion as well.
What would be the advantage of a set aside fund?
So let's say that CalPERS pension liability is at maybe 2-3%, and we're investing in something that's at 4 or 5%, then we're gaining more than if we put it in CalPERS. So we'll always have a plus balance. So whatever we give into our CalPERS, we'd actually be building up and able to offset the unfunded liability over a long period of time.
So it's an additional investment account where you put an additional fund in there to cover those liabilities as they move forward. Your unfunded liability is still something that has to be paid to CalPERS. But then you have this other fund that you can develop.
Okay. That's finance committee members, agenda items for the next meeting. With that, next meeting date, which we covered, April 24th. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. We made our 12 o'clock.